I'm Yvette Gassick. I head up the immigration practice here at Citation Group in Australia. And I'm a solicitor as well. I've been practicing for over 20 years in this space. It's my passion and something I enjoy very much.
AM, and an Australian Border Force compliance team is on their way to execute a search warrant on a property located on a citrus farm outside the town of Leeton. Intel suggests that 7 unlawful non-citizens may be residing on the farm, and the early morning operation has been planned to catch the unaware occupants.
There's a number of things at play here. I mean, this is a very common scenario. They do a dawn raid often because obviously they want to make sure that they're going to capture alleged illegal workers.
An Australian Border Force compliance team is about to enter a property they believe may be housing 7 unlawful non-citizens.
Immigration search warrant, open the door. Hi, how are you? Just one sec, excuse me. Let's get you to sit down, please. Hello.
5 men are located throughout the house and escorted to the lounge room.
I'm detaining you all under Section 189 of the Migration Act.
So in this scenario, often what happens and what often comes to light is some of these workers have been promised certain things before they get to Australia, and they do arrive and are exploited. And so there's no visa, or potentially there's no sponsorship that they've been promised. The working conditions are quite poor. You can see that they're all in pretty much one house or one room. And so the conditions can be quite trying for the individuals.
The compliance team has detained 6 men they suspect to be unlawful non-citizens.
May I ask you, do you work on this farm?
And a 7th man is fleeing into an adjoining field.
What occurs is immigration will question the individuals separate to the employer to get the full picture. They'll certainly ask for passports. On occasion, you'll find that the employer has taken the passports from the individuals. So in these scenarios, there are legislation that protect the workers as well. More recently, you'll see that the government enforced and brought into effect the Modern Slavery Act. And that in particular is targeted at these sort of scenarios to protect exploitation of migrant workers. But there's a few things happening, and that is the obligations relating to having illegal workers on your site as an employer, and then obviously the individual. So there's implications on both sides here. More often than not, they're seasonal workers. If they're fruit pickers, they might be on working holiday visas initially, so they would have had to have a visa to get into the country, and it's perhaps expired and they haven't renewed it, or they haven't found an employer to sponsor them. And so there's 2 issues here. It's certainly going to impact these individuals. They may end up in detention if they're unlawful. And then similarly for the employer, what's going to happen for him or her is their business will be impacted, particularly in relation to being able to sponsor people in the future, being able to bring in seasonal workers. They'll be on the radar and they may even get a fine. Worst case scenario, there's imprisonment as well, because there is legislation that governs this, and it's the Employer Sanctions Act, whereby if you as an employer have illegal workers on your site, that compliance sits with you to ensure that they have work rights. And so this legislation captures you as an employer, and the fines are quite hefty.
After travelling to Bali to renew his Australian tourist visa, this French passenger claims he is returning to spend another 2 months with his girlfriend who lives here.
Yeah, so renewing that sort of visa, you're not renewing it, you're just applying for another tourist visa.
Text messages discovered on his mobile phone suggest he actually intends to work here illegally.
I found one here that has stated that he is coming back to Australia on a visa and he'll be able to work for another 2 months. And now I've just located a roster in his phone for what looks like a cafe.
And it appears he has returned just in time to get back to work.
It looks like he's supposed to go back to work in 2 days, and he'll be working full-time for 4 days. on a tourist visa, that's not okay.
They're coming here as a second entry, so it's not his first entry into Australia. That raises alarm bells to any immigration officer at the border. They'd be asking questions. And then, of course, they have the ability to access and ask him for permission to, and it doesn't show that they did that, but I'm assuming he gave them permission to access his phone. And of course, all the evidence is there that he's coming to work, which suggests that perhaps he was on a tourist visa when he first came here and he was already working. Big no-no.
With the evidence.
What's of concern to us is that we did locate the messages to say that you're going to be working back here in Australia, and you know you're on a tourist visa, correct?
Yeah.
You know that you're not allowed to work on that visa?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So on your visa, you have certain conditions, and the conditions on your visa are very explicit. When you get your visa issued, it will tell you what conditions are attached, and you'll see very clearly on a tourist visa, it says no work. Immigration makes the assumption on the entry at the border that you've read the conditions on your visa.
It was just for a few shifts because just when he need me, he put me on the roster.
Mm-hmm. Well, the roster suggested that you're working Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, next week he would have need me.
Yeah, okay. And this is where you were working previously?
Helped them before, yeah.
Okay. So were they paying you in cash previously, or were you paying tax?
No, I paid in cash.
Paying cash, okay.
With this admission, the passenger is immediately issued with a notice of intention to consider cancelling his tourist visa.
But he's in a mess. They're going to issue him with a notice of intention to cancel, which basically gives him some time to respond. But they'll detain him if he decides to appeal it. They'll put him in Villawood if he's in Sydney. And he'd just be sitting there waiting for an appeal. Otherwise, he can just volunteer and leave.
Passenger now has a final opportunity to convince Officer Belinda why his visa should not be cancelled.
The main purpose of coming back in Australia under tourist visa was for visiting my girlfriend in Sydney. The fact that I received a message from a cafe putting me on the roster didn't prove I was going to work because it's something that I had to agree. So I didn't agree it yet. I haven't agreed, so it's not something that...
But you told me earlier that you were here to work at the cafe.
Well, he's basically trying to say that there's no consent from him, that he's intending to work. It can't be proven that he has actually said, I'm going to work. The issue he's got is that he did concede earlier that when he was here on the prior occasion, he was working. And it sounds like he was on a tourist visa before as well. So he's in breach of the prior visa and he's made that admission. For this one, yes, it does say on his phone that he's intending to work, but he hasn't said he's going to. So there is an argument there. The problem he's already got a breach. So he's got a history of it. His character becomes a question, and that is he's likely to reoffend. And so I really don't think he has a compelling argument, unfortunately. If this was a first offence, he may have got away with it, but this is a second entry. And he was planning to do the same thing. So obviously he's in a bit of a pickle. As a French national, individuals have certain entitlements to different visas, but he just would have had to have found an employer to sponsor him if he has the requisite background, or become a student, get a student visa, do some further study, and you can work 48 hours a fortnight as a student. So he's not had the right advice. He could have prevented all of this had he sought the right advice and not just come in and out. Obviously the employer that has taken him on, that's an issue. They should have checked his work rights and they should not be offering him work shifts. So there's an issue there. Potentially immigration might do a visit if they know the name of the employer, which it sounds like they do because they've got the roster. So they could potentially go and visit him and obviously issue a warning potentially, or worst case bar him as well from being able to sponsor. For the individual here, he's obviously in a situation where he's not even thought about either. He's just ignorant and hasn't thought about work rights, or he does know and just hasn't bothered to get the right working visa. He does look like he's quite young, so he could have just got a working holiday visa and sorted it out for himself. So it's likely, given he's lied, they may put him on a plane back. And what occurs then is he may be blackmarked from being able to apply for a further visa and be banned for a period of time. If they don't do that, then he'd just have to go offshore and apply for the right visa to come in and work.
At an early morning roadside operation, immigration suspect they have caught this Indonesian man working illegally.
So you're breaching your visa conditions this morning by driving people to work.
It's likely he will need to be transferred to the local police station for further questioning.
For immigration to be on the road and detaining the individual, they must have had a tip-off, and most of these are tip-offs. And it could be someone who's disgruntled and does an anonymous dob-in to immigration to check on the compliance. They're not random checks, they are calculated and obviously planned.
So I'll be asking you to step out of the vehicle shortly, but at the moment if you just remain there, and then we'll have a chat about your tourist visa and why you're working on it.
Yeah. But it seems that word of the situation has got out to the man's sister, who has just turned up, and she wants to know what's going on.
But he's already told me this morning that he's being paid for what he's doing today.
Because today I'm not feeling well. That's why I need someone to driving just today.
Immigration will need to determine if this is just a one-off or an ongoing arrangement. The man's sister, Maelia, is adamant that her brother has done nothing wrong.
He only helping me driving just in the morning to drop to the office. This is not working because I need someone help.
She actually owns and operates a business contracting workers out to the local farms.
70 people work for me and stay in my place. I organize them to work in the farm. I've been checking every year, been stopped. I never even one my workers found out without visa.
But now officers need to detain her brother.
Okay, so we're going to get you to step out. Okay, so I'm going to grab onto this arm.
Maelia steps in when she sees that her brother is being detained.
So this individual, her brother, it sounds like he's either unlawful or he's on the wrong visa and doesn't have work rights. And so as a result, immigration must detain him. So they must have known that he was going to be on the road that day to actually detain him because it sounds like potentially this may not have been the first time, even though the sister is indicating it's likely it was only a one-off. What will possibly also happen is they may start to investigate the sister and her operations as well because she's subcontracting out labourers. So that will open up the door for immigration to also query what her operations are about. For the brother, he'll be detained, he'll be questioned, and if they feel it's appropriate to put him into detention because he's on the wrong visa, they may do that. And he may be required, well, he'd need to get a lawyer. That would be the first thing because there's probably a story around it and he needs to be obviously represented to present his case.
Maelia is insisting that Richard hasn't broken any immigration laws by driving workers to local farms for her employment contracting business.
It's not fair. No, you're charging people without see them.
Okay, so
driving helping me today because I'm not feeling well to drop to the office. That's not working in the visa. Is he working? He get paid for that? Where is the evidence?
Maelia lives.
So she must know, it sounds like, that he must be on some sort of visa that has no work rights, potentially. And so she's trying to frame it in a way that just driving is not working. That's questionable because he is actually doing a working task. Even if he's not getting paid, it's work. You don't have to be paid to be considered working because volunteer work can also be an issue because he's not holding the right visa, potentially. So it's really a question around defining those parameters of what defines work and making sure there's clarity. I don't think she's not in the know. To be running a labour hire company, she's also indicated that she's checked everybody's visas and knows everyone's work rights. So I don't think she's not aware.
How many times have you done this before for her, driven the workers to work?
This Indonesian man, who was here on a tourist visa, was stopped at a dawn roadside operation, driving a busload of farm workers for his sister. And it may not be the only time he has done this.
So I've had about 1 month being here, or 1.5 months, I've done it maybe 10 times or 15 times, I forget.
Having admitted to driving the bus on a regular basis, Richard is issued with an intention to cancel his visa. Now he will have one last chance to plead his case.
I don't understand about situation in Australia. How come come here just help my sister. I don't understand. I don't understand. I just help. I get the problem. I can't too much. I don't know. In my country, if you have family, you need to help. No need to pay, get the pay or something. Just help.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously quite a heartbreaking scenario, and this is quite common, where individuals think that they're not working by just helping out, but he's on a tourist visa, so there's no work, and this is a duty that he's doing that is part of a work scenario. So being on a tourist visa, there's no work whatsoever. And so the sister operates a business, and he is driving individuals to a premises to allow them to work. It's not just giving someone a lift. And this is not just a one occasion, which he's admitted, it's been at least 10 times. So you can understand from his scenario, there are cultural differences, so he's indicated that. There's no, I guess, bad intention, but he's technically in breach of a visa, and that's all it is. It's a black and white rule. If you're in breach of your visa, you get your visa cancelled and you may be deported. Okay, so obviously there were people detained, so there must have been a tip-off that potentially she was hiring illegal workers, and so it looks like 12 people were detained and deported. In relation to the brother, obviously you could see there was some genuineness to his story, and perhaps he had no money to return home, and maybe he needed to borrow money from his sister, whatever it might have been. His visa would have been finishing up in any event, and so usually tourist visas are for 90 days. Potentially he was getting close to the end of that period, and they'll probably just let him sort of see it out and then ask him to leave voluntarily. So they allowed him to stay on and didn't detain him necessarily, but they would have been watching to ensure that he departed. So that's one of those cases where compassionate grounds were granted.
Come to Australia today? Yeah, what do you intend to do while you're here?
So today is the first day. Tomorrow I'm going to Darling Harbour and also going to see the Sydney University because I think about my son can study in there.
Okay, are you currently employed?
Yes, I'm working there.
Married?
Yes.
The woman tells Officer Alex she has a husband and 9-year-old son back home in China, and this is the first time she has ever left her home country.
So why would you travel by yourself then?
My manager gave me a short holiday.
Do you know anybody in Australia?
No.
Who booked your trip to Australia?
Everything is arranged by my boss. My boss always tries to look after me. I really feel so grateful.
The immigration officer obviously has some suspicions. She would have been pulled aside on her entry into Australia. They must have had a concern that her visit was not genuine. And so the officer is obviously probing her in a lot more detail. The sense is, and I think where the immigration officer is concerned, is a lot of what she's saying seems to be scripted. She's been given a script, potentially, and so he has these suspicions around why she's really here. And so he's obviously going to keep probing. He doesn't have any proof at this point, but it might be they haven't got to checking her phone or anything like that at this point in time to have evidence per se. It's based on her word. But I imagine as it progresses, more will come out.
So did you pay for any of this trip?
I do not pay any 1 cent.
The woman says her entire reason for being here is because of her boss back in China.
How long have you been working for this company?
About 10 years.
But so far, officers have no proof that the company even exists.
So what do they do with building materials?
I just rather know all the building material, but not quite understand the details and not know the price of that, because I'm just doing work related to human resources.
I'd like you to provide me with some more details. I'm very intrigued because I've also worked in HR, in human resource. So the fact that you don't know what your company does, yet you assign people to roles, that surprises me. Can you give me some more detail?
So she's saying that her boss sent her here. And so if your boss has sent you here, you're obviously going to know about your company. So they have suspicion that this boss doesn't exist, or there's another ulterior motive as to why she's here. And so interrogating her about her, they're not interested in the company. They really want to know, does she know who her company is?
因为我跟你实话说，我不太懂建筑。
Yeah, honestly, I have no knowledge about building construction. So because I got a special relation with the boss.
The woman tells Officer Alex her boss is friends with her husband, so she doesn't need to know much about her job.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to suspend the interview. We're just going to have a break.
Her responses have done little to convince officers the woman is gainfully employed back in China, but they will try and call the number provided on her employment letter once more.
So ask the person who they are and what company they represent.
If someone answers, the passenger may be off the hook. They have called the company number provided on her employment letter, but the response only adds to their concerns.
This is not a company number at all.
Okay.
By asking her what's the name of the company, she said that this is not a company.
Suspecting the employment letter may be fake, the woman will be asked once again to explain what's going on.
The suspicions of the officer that this is all staged and she's part of could be a syndicate, potentially bringing women in for ulterior motives such as prostitution. And so following it up and confirming that this place doesn't exist, which is, they see these scenarios quite often. And so he's obviously going to now ask her more about the company again, and obviously then put it to her that this company doesn't exist. So whether she concedes or she doesn't, I guess we'll see, but it will put her in a difficult position and potentially require her to leave. They may deport her. So you've got to bear in mind, a lot of these women have never travelled before. This might be her first trip overseas, potentially. This is her first trip to Australia. She's got no family here. She's relying on what she's been told, and she's been given a script. And they've told her, if they ask you, present the letter. She's just doing what she was told. And so she's obviously going to get caught up in all of this. And they don't put real numbers on there because they know if they get to the point where they're presenting the letter, then they're likely going to be sent back anyway. So they take the chance. And this girl thinks by having the letter it's going to save her, otherwise she may not have travelled without it. They've given her some false promises, potentially. She hasn't been given the full story. If the letter was a genuine one and that she did have gainful employment back in China and she was coming out to do what she intended, that she advised, she didn't say she was coming here to work. She was looking to scope out a university for her son and other things that she mentioned. There's no issue with that. If she's on a tourist visa and she's genuinely a tourist, then there's no reason for them to cancel her visa and tell her to return back home. She'd be likely able to stay.
Strongly suspecting the woman's employment letter has been fabricated to help her enter Australia, Officer Alex takes the next step.
This is a notice of intention to consider cancellation of your visa.
This passenger has almost run out of chances.
Reason being is that I believe that this is a fraudulent document.
She has been given 10 minutes to come up with a response to the notice, and she now has a final chance to plead her case.
What is your response?
首先，公司的资料是真实的，我不清楚。
So firstly, the company is true. I'm not sure why cannot get through, cannot be confirmed.
我有稳定的工作，有稳定的收入。
I got a regular job, stable job, and good income. I do not have any reason to provide you false information.
Her response fails to explain why, despite several attempts, officers have been unable to verify her employment.
Your comments have been taken into account when making my decision.
And on these grounds, a final decision is made.
After weighing up all of the information available to me, I was satisfied that grounds for cancelling your visa outweighed the reasons for not cancelling your visa. As you're no longer the holder of a visa, you have been refused immigration clearance under Section 172 of the Migration Act.
Believing she is not here as a genuine tourist, the passenger's visa is cancelled.
If they're looking to cancel, they need to be able to be satisfied that her intention for visiting Australia is not for tourism purposes. And it based on the fraudulent document that they indicated in terms of her employment, they were concerned that her visit to Australia was not genuine in terms of being a tourist. So they were able to cancel.
It is a very simple and straightforward case. You provided information, we've tested that information is found to be bogus or not correct, and as a result, we're cancelling your visa. And that is just specific to one regulation. One.
You've got to ensure that you are holding the correct visa for the correct purpose, and your intention is for that purpose of that visa. And so on that basis, they also have an issue relating to character, where someone is found to be giving false information, they can cancel the visa, and it's based on false information and a bogus document that he spoke about. Then that is a concern, and it goes to character. This person's not to be trusted, essentially, they've lied, and also provided a fraudulent document, so they're not going to be allowed entry into the country.
At Sydney Airport, Border Force officers have some concerns about two women arriving from China. They claim they barely know each other, but documents found in their luggage indicate this may not be the case.
At the moment, they said they met on the aeroplane, but I'd say they've known each other for a while because they've both got the same documents in their bag. Exactly the same booking company has booked their hotels, and they say they met on the plane.
One of the documents they have located in both women's suitcases is an identical travel itinerary, complete with the same spelling mistakes.
So the Kayama natural blowing, would that be the Kayama blowhole by chance?
Other items located in this woman's handbag raise officers' suspicions.
She's got a bag of photos, passport photos.
Yep.
All different hairstyles. So that's a wig. That could be the hairstyle now. So she's changing the look. Yeah.
Everything is indicating these women may be here for more than a holiday, as they claim. And the mystery deepens further as this passenger's mobile keeps getting calls from an Australian number.
Just rang, yeah.
Both women claim they know no one in Australia, so Officer Lee does some investigating.
So the number that he's been trying to ring the passenger is linked to a hairdressing beauty salon, but the actual company is registered as a brothel in Western Sydney.
Yeah, a few alarm bells ringing for this one. So the fact that the evidence is there, documentary evidence, to support the opposite intention of their visit, and then in addition to the photos relating to the lady's identity, obviously is going to raise concerns, and the documents being identical for both ladies, and then obviously each of them, they'll be pulled aside and questioned separately to ascertain the story and the scenario, and depending on the outcome of that, the immigration will decide whether they allow them in or whether they will be deported. Because often, what is often discovered in these types of investigations is, on occasion, more often than not, these ladies, or often women, are brought in with they may have thought they were going to work in a hairdressing salon or in a beauty salon, but in fact it is a brothel, and they weren't aware that that's what they would be actually asked to do. So there's a whole lot of investigation that would occur to ensure that they are protected, if that is the case. And then obviously consequences for the employer, it could be the business is shut down, would be another outcome.
There were some concerns raised at the back of hall, so we need to take them in the room and find out what they are really here for.
Border Force officers suspect the women know each other and they may have travelled here for more than just a holiday.
Are you travelling with anyone?
我自己来的。I
travel by myself. What is the purpose of your trip to Australia?
过来旅游。
I come here for my holiday. What will you do on your holiday?
就是那个铁台呀，然后。
I have an itinerary. Who prepared that itinerary?
我自己定的呀。
I made itinerary by myself. Since this plan was prepared by you, can you tell me what's in your plan?
我那个旅程表嘛，我因为我这个东西记住了，然后。
She cannot remember the place of interest she's going to visit until she can see the travel plan.
The woman is unaware that officers have found an identical itinerary in the other passenger's bag, and Officer Rakesh confronts her with this information.
Okay, so a few things that are going against her in the interview. The itinerary is obviously important because if her intention is to visit a country perhaps she's not visited before, you'd know which key landmarks you'd want to visit if you've prepared your own itinerary. But the issue is going to be how she's able to explain that an identical lady, who she says she doesn't know, has an identical itinerary. The individuals saying that they don't know each other is purely because there's been a script that's been provided to them in case they were pulled over and pulled aside, and they were told to indicate that they didn't know each other. So whoever's given them that information, they've just followed that, thinking that's the right thing to do to get them off the hook. But in fact, it's making it worse. They're digging a hole.
Officers do a little digging and they uncover further evidence revealing the truth.
Now, we've just obtained the boarding pass from the second passenger, which confirms that they actually were seated side by side. Okay. Also, the sequence numbers of the boarding passes indicate that they were processed or checked in concurrently. So if they claim that they're travelling independently, it isn't actually plausible when you consider that they were both ticketed by the same agent, ticketed on the same day, visa granted on the same day, seated next to each other, presenting evidence of the same travel plans.
Of course, immigration is going to investigate. They're going to look at every aspect of this trip. So they've pulled out the boarding passes and the evidence is clearly pointing to these ladies knowing each other. They sat side by side, surely they spoke, and they checked in at the same time. So it's just pointing in another direction that they're both lying. So the Border Force officials will investigate until they feel they have enough evidence to justify the cancellation of the visa. And so if they feel they've got enough, they'll stop. And they may not need to report it to the police. They may report the brothel, the hairdressing salon that they've discovered is a brothel. That'll certainly be a separate investigation because there may even be a raid done. There may be other women there in a similar scenario, potentially on the wrong visas. But these two women will be treated individually related to their visas, and it's highly likely their stories are not going to add up in terms of coming here genuinely for tourist purposes, and the visas are likely to be cancelled. Both women had their visas cancelled. That was expected. The 3-year ban is often what occurs where they are concerned that these individuals will obviously try it again and try to come in on a similar scenario and see if they can get through. But the ban is there because there's a character issue, and they also provided a bogus document. There is what we call a public interest criteria, and it's called PIC 4020. These are scheduled criteria under the legislation, and where someone is actually found to hold and present a bogus document associated with a visa, they actually have a 3-year ban. There's an exclusion on being able to apply for a subsequent visa. There's been new legislation that come into effect. So a lot of these women were held to ransom, whereby the employers would take their passports away from them and they were essentially felt bound. They now can leave their employer and not have their visas cancelled. There are work rights or work avenues for them to, firstly, if they weren't being paid, They can go through and sue the employer through what we call the Workplace Justice Program, where migrants who are being exploited can actually hold those former employees to account without fear. And so they're protected. They can remain lawfully until they recover the monies that was dutifully owed to them, and then potentially consider if there are other visa options available to them. It may be that there aren't, but at least then they won't be deported. They can leave voluntarily once they've actually pursued the employer and got what was rightfully theirs in terms of wages that were unpaid. So there is obviously, I mentioned earlier, the Modern Slavery Act, and so that's where it actually protects workers who are in these scenarios and often are not aware that that's what they've been brought out to do. So that's one thing. We're not aware that that is the case here. We don't know whether the women were aware where they were actually going ultimately. The issue here was that they were not genuinely considered to be tourists as a result of the bogus documents they presented, so the visas were cancelled. The implications for the business, well, immigration would have to have the connection between the two women that they were actually going to be employed by this particular business. It wasn't clear that that's actually what they determined. They just had a phone number of a potential place they were going to work. But it doesn't indicate there was some sort of offer of employment necessarily. But what it would do is create a suspicion and have the immigration would then have authority to raid necessarily, like they'd do one of those compliance raids where they would go in to check visa work rights of existing employees or people on the premises. To check if they have work rights. So it'd be more of a compliance issue. But certainly for their purposes, it's likely they'll probably get a visit from immigration as a first step. So as we've seen in a lot of these scenarios, there are issues that relate to employers and then obviously the individuals coming into the country. For the employers, it's really important to check the work rights of anyone you're hiring, regardless how minimal the role is that they're doing or how senior. Everyone has to have a visa to be lawful and have work rights. And so you'd want to ensure at the bare minimum, whether you're a small business or a large business, that you're checking the work rights of the individuals you're hiring as a standard process and procedure in your onboarding processes. I think what occurs is a lot of employers, particularly small businesses, don't think this applies to them or they don't turn their minds to it. If they do turn their minds to it, they realise it is costly to sponsor someone for a work visa. So often they try to go for the cheapest route, and often it is hiring someone on the wrong visa, thinking they won't get caught. And so that is quite ignorant, and ultimately it does catch up. If it's not now, at some point, whether it's in a few years or in a month, it will catch up with you because Australia is very highly regulated. We have quite strict laws in place related to immigration, and then under the employment law front, of course, workers' rights and protections are in place, and employers need to comply with all relevant laws that relate to workplace entitlements and rights. From the individual's perspective, often they're promised something and they see Australia, potentially if they're coming from another country that's perhaps not a first world country as an example, they're promised something and they see Australia as a land of opportunity, potentially to make money, send money back home, support families back home, and they're told a story often and they don't realise how our laws are actually enforced here. It could be a lot more relaxed in their home country, or it could be they think that they've been told there's no issue, and so they come here with a promise and then realise when they're actually deterred and held up at the border that this is quite serious business, and that's when it hits home that this is actually a problem, and it's too late then. And so the exploitation of workers abroad, often that's very hard to minimise, but certainly for employers here that are hiring people who are coming from abroad or are already in Australia, you must ensure they're on the right visa. There's no excuses. Ignorance, whether it's reckless or whether it's deliberate, there are consequences, and the full force of the law is applied. So why should someone contact Citation Migration? Obviously we're specialists in immigration, Often businesses contact us because either they've got someone who holds a visa and they're not sure what they're allowed to do. Can they work with me? What are the rights? What are the entitlements? What are the conditions on the visa? What are they restricted? The other option is where they want to sponsor them. So it could be that there is someone offshore that they've identified as a candidate that they want to work in their business and they need assistance to sponsor them. We can assist with that. Or it could be that someone is already onshore. They might be already working for another employer and they want to take over that sponsorship and they want to know how to do that. Other scenarios are where individuals, so not just businesses, but individuals might have a partner who is in a relationship with them and they want to sponsor them. So it could be under the family migration programs. The other types of visas is where someone has a particular talent, so they could have international recognition and they want permanent residence up front. Well, then there are certain pathways they can take to stay permanently in Australia. And the other scenario which I mentioned, which we haven't discussed, is short-term work assignments. So you might have a project coming up where you want some individuals either from another office that you have abroad, or it could be you're in a joint venture with another company and you need these individuals to come out and do some particular expertise on a project and then go back home. So those visas can be granted for 3 months and up to 6 months, and they don't require you to sponsor them, they really just need an invitation letter. So we can assist with that as well. So there are all sorts of scenarios that we can assist you with and we'd love to help.